From a maximum security cell in Germany, a man ordered the death of the prosecutor who put him away. The police recorded the plan. They had the tapes, the plot, the hired hitman. But the man was acquitted shortly after, when he was deported. The prosecutor, the representative of the law, the man who had won the trial, packed his things and fled Germany, terrified. He didn't fear a free man, he feared a ghost, a man whose real power began where the law ended. Necati Arabacı was born in Cologne, Germany, on February 14, 1972. He was the son of the Gastarbeiter, the Turkish guest workers who came to rebuild a post-war Germany hungry for labor. He grew up between two worlds, in a country that saw him as useful, but not always as its own. This environment, for many, was a dead end. For Arabacı, it was an opportunity. In the 1990s, the nights of Cologne pulse in an entertainment district known as the Ring, and whoever controls the club doors controls the night. Arabacı didn't look for a job, he looked for control. He began to organize the nightclub bouncers, most of them tough young men, many also from immigrant backgrounds. He created the Arabacı clan, his first personal army. It wasn't just muscle, it was strategy. Controlling the bouncers meant controlling access. It meant deciding who got in and who didn't. It meant having eyes and ears in every dark corner. And, above all, it meant controlling the flow of drugs and fear. The club owners paid for security that was actually a silent extortion. Arabacı turned a low-status job into the cornerstone of his empire. On the streets that saw him grow up as an outsider, he was now becoming the king. With control of the doors, Arabacı opened the way to a much darker and more lucrative business. His power expanded beyond Cologne, throughout the industrial Rhine-Ruhr region. His name became synonymous with a network of brothels, with names like Babylon and Wyago. His method was cruelly systematic. His bouncers, the men who controlled the fun in the clubs, had a second task: to identify and befriend young girls. They would seduce them with a promise of affection or a better life, only to later drag them into prostitution. It was a production line of victims, a human trafficking system designed with the coldness of a business plan. Arabacı's empire was diverse and violent. The charges that would eventually bring him to justice paint the full picture: pimping, human trafficking, assault, extortion, weapons possession, and organized crime. He wasn't a simple thug. He was the CEO of a criminal enterprise. His nickname, the Godfather of Cologne, was no exaggeration. It reflected a reality of absolute power. This power was so solid that not even prison walls could contain it. Years later, while serving his sentence, German authorities remained convinced that Arabacı was still running the famous Colosseum brothel in the city of Augsburg from his cell. His orders traveled beyond the bars, proving that his command structure was loyal and effective. He had built an organization that could function without his physical presence, the mark of a true capo. In the early 2000s, Necati Arabacı's name was a whisper of fear in the German underworld and a constant headache for the police. But one prosecutor, Jürgen Botzum, decided that enough was enough. Botzum was no ordinary bureaucrat. He was a hunter. 4 months, he gathered evidence, connected the dots, and prepared to take down the Godfather. In 2002, the operation was launched. An elite German police commando unit stormed Arabacı's world. The arrest was swift, decisive. The empire of neon lights and violence was facing the cold light of the law. The trial, in 2004, was a decisive moment. The German state presented its case, detailing the network of extortion, the trafficking of women, and the systematic violence. The weight of the evidence was overwhelming. Then, Arabacı did something unexpected. He confessed. It was not an act of repentance. It was a masterstroke. In the German legal system, A confession can mean a lighter sentence. Arabats, facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison, chose a controlled defeat. He sacrificed his short-term freedom to ensure a definite end. On September 30, 2004, the judge's gavel fell, 9 years in prison. For the public and the police, it was a victory. The godfather of Cologne was behind bars, sent to JVA Bochum prison. The reign of terror seemed to be over, but for Arabats, this was not an end. It was just an intermission. Inside Bochum prison, Arabats was not just another inmate. He was an authority in exile, but his resentment burned, focused on one man, prosecutor Jürgen Botzum. The police, suspecting that Arabats would not stay quiet, bugged his visiting room, recording every conversation. And what they heard was blood. Curdling. The tapes revealed a chilling plot. Arabats, from his cell, was allegedly hiring an Albanian hitman to find and execute Botzum. The state reacted immediately. The prosecutor was placed under 24-hour police protection, and the prosecutors launched their heaviest weapon against Arabats, a new charge to impose Sicherungsverwahrung, a form of indefinite detention reserved for Germany's most dangerous and incorrigible criminals. It seemed like the definitive end. They had the recordings, the irrefutable proof. But in court, Arabats' defense found a crack in the state's armor. A technicality, almost absurd. A mistranslation was discovered in some of the tape transcripts. A misinterpreted word, a lost nuance. It was enough to create reasonable doubt. The result was unbelievable. Necati Arabacı was acquitted of the murder plot. The threat of indefinite detention vanished. In 2007, after serving only part of his original 9-year sentence, Arabacı walked out of prison, not as a reformed man, but as a legend. He was released and immediately deported to Turkey. And that's when the unthinkable happened. Jürgen Botzum, the prosecutor who had pursued him, the man who represented the German state, understood that he was no longer safe in his own country. With Arabacı beyond the reach of German law, Botzum fled Germany. The godfather had not only won his freedom, he had won a psychological war. For the German authorities, deportation was the last resort, a way to expel the problem. For Necati Arabacı, it was a promotion. He landed in Turkey not as an exiled criminal, but as a victorious general returning home, his reputation, forged on the streets of Cologne and in the German courts, was now his passport to the next level of global organized crime. Turkey offered him the perfect sanctuary, a country that does not extradite its own citizens. From this impregnable base, his rise was meteoric. In 2010, just 3 years after his deportation, he was no longer operating in the shadows. He participated in an international summit of Hells Angels bosses in Izmir, Turkey. There, he was appointed president of a new and powerful chapter, the Hells Angels MC Nomads Turkey. The title Nomad was perfect for him. Nomad chapters are not tied to a city or territory. They are a mobile elite force, ideal for a leader with international ambitions. His notoriety was his greatest asset. In the world of the Hells Angels, a man who tries to assassinate a prosecutor from prison and gets away with it is not a risk. He's an idle dot. By 2013, his power was so great that when the leader of the Hells Angels in Europe, Frank Hannebuth, was arrested in Spain, Necati Arabacı's name was strongly mentioned as his natural successor. The godfather of Cologne had transcended. He was no longer a local king. He was a prince in the global empire of the most feared biker gang on the planet. Deportation hadn't stopped him. It had freed him. Today, Necati Arabacı is a ghost haunting Europe. In 2015, Spanish authorities issued a European Union-wide arrest warrant for him. The charges were the usual: leading a criminal organization, extortion, drug trafficking, and running brothels in Spain. But an arrest warrant is just a piece of paper when the target is out of your reach. Protected by his Turkish citizenship, Arabacı operates with almost total impunity. Turkey does not extradite him. He has been arrested there several times, as in 2018 and 2020, but each time he has been released, often due to lack of evidence or technicalities. This suggests one of two things: either he is a master at covering his tracks, or his influence in his homeland is so deep that he is untouchable. His network continues to grow. He has been linked to other criminal groups, like the United Tribunes and to factions of the Hells Angels, involved in murders. The story of Necati Arabacı has no clear ending. And that is the most disturbing part. There is no closure, no justice, no resolution. It is the story of a man who understood the rules of the system better than anyone, and used them to destroy it from within. He took advantage of borders, extradition laws, and fear to build a criminal career that spans decades and continents. Thank you for staying until the end. Behind every video are hours of research to bring you the complete story. If you value that effort, the best way to support us is by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. See you in the next investigation.